is there's a recording in progress. That's the first announcement. Second, we have two new executive board members. One is Laverne Sheehan has agreed to step up and take over as executive secretary. And Bob Hildebrand has agreed to step up and take over as program chairman. I'm grateful to both of them. Welcome to the executive board. And I look forward to working with both of you in the future. The next announcement I want to make has to do with the our club's, I guess I'd call it a pre-endorsement process. We're going to do the endorsement process the same way we did it last time, which was quite successful. Candidates seeking the endorsement of our club will be interviewed by a 3-person endorsement committee. That committee makes recommendations to the members regarding endorsements, and hopefully will explain why they're making the recommendations, either upfront or if they're asked to explain. Then the members will vote on endorsements. There will also be nominations for endorsements from the floor of the member endorsement meeting. If everything runs smoothly, the endorsement interviews will occur prior to our next meeting, which I believe is March 26th. And then on March 26th, once again, everything being equal, we will have the members vote on the endorsement. So that's the plan going forward. The next announcement is really me just deferring to our esteemed regional director, Ellie Kay, who is here, who has asked for a few minutes to talk to us about information that she's just got about KDEM and the upcoming election process. So I'm going to turn it over quickly to Ellie Kay, keeping in mind we have a lot to do. Thank you, Ellie.
Not a problem, because I have to go to another KDEM meeting at 3 o'clock, so I'll make it very quick. There was a meeting this morning regarding the convention, which, as you all know, is going to begin on Friday, the 4th of March. That's this Friday. The convention starts. On Saturday from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. we will be voting electronically. If you are a delegate, you will be given the opportunity to vote for the full ticket. That will be all of the statewide offices, as well as congressional districts 41, which with the pre-endorsement conference, we were unable to get the 70% for one candidate. So there'll be 3 candidates that will be on that ballot. Sharina Karani, Brian Mosley, and Will Rollins. So that will take place on Saturday. It, again, will be electronically. If you have not, if you are a delegate, please go to KDEM/convention. You'll be able to get all the information. There's a lot of caucuses going on. There's going to be a lot of meetings going on. On Wednesday, as an example, on Wednesday, the, where am I? I'm sorry, I'm on the 2nd of March. There will be the Women's Caucus, and that is going to be a salute to women and women in justice. So it's going to be quite a convention this time around. Once again, this is virtual. So if you are a delegate to the convention and you haven't gotten your information, let me know, and I will be happy to facilitate getting whatever it is you need. Christy, you know you have my full support. I apologize, I won't be able to stay with you for the entire meeting today. Also, one last thing, if the Democrats of the Desert have lost members this year to passing, we'd like to know about it. I'd like to know about it, because at all of our conventions, for those of you who have attended, you know, there is a section that's in memoriam. And so if we've lost members to COVID or whatever this year, please let me know, and I'll make sure that their names are mentioned on the scroll that will take place at the convention. Once again, the convention will kick off on Friday, the 4th of March. The 5th, we will be voting And on the 6th, of course, will be 5th and 6th will be general meeting. So there's a lot going on. It's going to be quite a convention. We've got a lot of folks to support and to get moving on, but we will come out of that convention with an endorsed candidate for the 41st congressional district. We will have our candidate who will be running against Ken Calvert. Sorry, you know how I am when I have to mention people's names like him. So I thank you for your time very much, Stephen. If there's any quick questions, I'll be glad to take them. If not, I will see you all soon. And again, if you have any questions or any problems, I'm available. I'm back from New York. It was a great trip, but we're back to doing what we got to do. Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
Very welcome, Ellie. And finally, before I turn it over to our first speaker, I want to acknowledge and recognize the presence of our first speaker is a candidate, but I'll introduce her separately. We have two other candidates here with us. Will Rollins is here, who is running for the congressional seat in 41. And I told Will he could talk for about a minute, but not make a speech for fairness reasons. And Judge, you're here. Yes. You can say hello to the members, but please don't make a political speech until we're not going to allow that until the filing is closed for obvious reasons. People who are familiar with what happened in the past, I guess I'd say. Ron Galperin is our second speaker. He's a candidate, but he'll get a longer introduction a little further on. So Will, you've got a few seconds to say hello.
Thanks, Stephen. I'll keep it short. I know you've got a packed program today. So my name is Will Rollins. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I helped prosecute some of the people who attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, running against Ken Calvert because I think he's a threat to our democracy. And speaking of democracy, just wanted to really quickly address Ukraine this week, because it's really important that we have somebody in Congress who cares about democracy in the United States so we can step up and help fledgling democracies like Ukraine when they really need it. So what I think the country needs to be doing right now is expose Putin the way that the administration has done it, stayed a step ahead of him by alerting the world to his plans before it's happened. They've isolated him from the world economics system, including the possibility of cutting him off from SWIFT as a nuclear option if they take this aggression further. And then we've got to do what the president said we're going to do, which is defend every inch of NATO territory and possibly invoke Article 5 if Russia expands its aggression into other states in Eastern Europe. How you can help, we're going to put up some information in the chat right now. We've got a link to some organizations that are doing great work to help the people of Ukraine as they are fighting for their democracy right now, which is pretty incredible. And so I encourage you to take a look at that link. And then the last thing I'll just say is the party convention is next week. Got 57% of the vote at the pre-endorsement conference. So thank you to those of you who voted for me. And if you didn't vote for me, I'm asking now that you consider doing so, because I think that the pre-endorsement vote showed that I've got a path to the party's endorsement. And the sooner that the party can unite around a candidate who can beat Ken Calvert, the sooner we can raise the war chest that it will take to beat him. And I've got
thank you, Will.
Thanks,
it's a good thing you didn't make a political speech. From the judiciary, from the bench, we're going to have Judge Strunsky speak. Judge is running for Riverside County. Donald. I'm sorry. Riverside County DA. So please say hello and keep it short because we're very busy.
Okay.
What are we so busy with, by the way?
I'm sorry. First of all, I'm Burke Strunsky. I'm running for Riverside County District Attorney. So I'm a lifelong Democrat. I have the support of many of the Democratic leaders here in the county. I'm sorry. And I'm looking.
Somebody needs to mute.
What?
So I'm a lifelong Democrat, and right now the only Democrat in the district attorney's race. We know the incumbent is Republican. So far, I've garnered the support of many of the Democratic leaders. I was a prosecutor for 15 years, and I've been a judge for 5. It's time for everybody to step up. There's tremendous injustices and ineffectiveness in our current district attorney. And so I'm going to come back and ask for all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor, which I'm used to saying. All right, I'm going to move right now. Our first speaker is Christy Holstege. This is probably somebody who does not need a long introduction to this group. I think everybody knows Christy. She is the current mayor of Palm Springs. She is running for the state Senate, and she's going to talk to us about the new district lines, which are confusing at the least and sometimes incomprehensible at the most, and try to explain to us what the new lines are and most importantly, what they mean to Democrats. So Christy, you're up.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's great to be here with all of you and see so many friendly faces, familiar faces, and it's always great to be with Democrats on a Saturday afternoon. And thank you all for all of the work that you've done over the years to change some of these districts, right? So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what we're looking at for the Coachella Valley. I'll tell you a little bit about the changes to the Assembly District that I'm running for, and we can talk about state Senate and just the politics of those districts. And then we can talk a little bit about Congress. So overall, you know that the Coachella Valley was redistricted in a way where obviously we were split up for our congressional district. The state Senate, the state Assembly District, and that congressional district share a similar line, splitting the Coachella Valley up through La Quinta. So Indio being on one side and La Quinta being on the other side. And I think there are pros and cons to this. Obviously, we're not used to not having Congressman Raul Ruiz, our fearless Democratic leader who flipped that seat. I think that there are strong arguments that the Coachella Valley is a community of interest, which is what the state looks at when drawing these lines and redistricting. By the way, I'm going to put it looks like I can't share my screen, but I'm putting in the chat the link to wedrawthelinesca.org, and you can see the final map there. And there's feedback, I think, somehow. So, and I'm sorry, I have a sinus infection, but campaigns don't stop, Democratic values don't stop, and we're here to flip these seats and win. So here I am. So please bear with me with my voice. And so it's hard that we're no longer together in a congressional district, but it also leads to the opportunity to have 2 votes for Coachella Valley issues. And I think that can be powerful if you look at, the state Senate or state Assembly, that we need 2 votes on the Salton Sea. We need 2 votes on the environmental crisis that we're facing as a desert and as a district, right? Being on the front lines of climate change here. So I think that there are some good wins that we can get out of having 2 seats. And then obviously the opportunity to get Ken Calvert out and elect a Democrat, and to have that be such a close race now is an incredible opportunity. So I want to tell you a little bit about in detail the Assembly District that I'm running for and what's changed. And we can talk a little bit about state Senate and then the congressional district. And Stephen, if it's okay, I'd love to ask Will to follow up with me and just share any information about, because he knows those lines and the data really closely, and we'll ask him not to campaign. But Will, if you can, since you're the candidate and you're on, and I'd love for you to talk about that district, Stephen, if that's okay.
No, that's fine, so long as Will promises not to campaign and just be his usual informative self.
I promise no campaigning. It's force of habit there. So I will, I'll just describe what happened with the lines. So it used to be called California, and thank you, Christy, for inviting me to just make these comments, because I have been in the weeds on what happened with our new congressional district. So it went from 42 to now 41 is the new name of the congressional district. It goes from Norco and Corona, Woodcrest, Lake Matthews in the northwest part of the district, through Temescal Valley, down the 15, Lakeland Village, Wildemar, Menifee, parts of Lakeview, and then all the way up to Calamasa. So it looks a little bit like a W if you look at the district. And then if you go out east on the 10, it cuts out a little bit and then goes back to Palm Springs, Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert, Indian Wells, La Quinta. The great news for all Democrats in this cycle is that the demographic change and the registration change, we just got some updated numbers from the Registrar of Voters. Only 838 voters total separate registered Republicans and registered Democrats in this new congressional district, which is remarkable. That's out of 450,000 registered voters, and there are 90,000 voters with no party preference. So it is a huge pickup opportunity for our party as a whole in these midterms. And I think we can get rid of him this year. So with that, I'll kick it back to Christy to take over with the rest of her redistricting presentation.
Thank you, Will. The candidates always know the details so specifically for their districts. So thank you for being an expert there. So for state assembly, I'll just share that the district also has changed significantly because of redistricting. Equality California did a lot of advocacy at the redistricting commission to keep the LGBTQ communities of interest together, especially the cities of Palm Springs, Desert Hot Springs, and Cathedral City. Our last assembly districts actually had Cathedral City and Desert Hot Springs with Eduardo Garcia's district. And so they, because he has a voting rights district or a majority Latino district, those were included in his district. And that has now changed. So the former assembly district was AD 42. We are now AD 47, Assembly District 47. And it keeps that Western Coachella Valley together. So it's from La Quinta all the way through the Coachella Valley, now adding Desert Hot Springs and Cathedral City. It still includes Idlewild. It includes the high desert, so up through Joshua Tree. It no longer includes 29 Palms, so that was excluded out. They wanted to put it with other military bases, and so that's good news for Democrats because that's a very red area. And then it goes through Banning, Beaumont, and Yucaipa. So it's an interesting assembly district as we have a number of sort of unique communities, but you can imagine that large geographic area and sort of the high desert, the Western Coachella Valley, and then Banning, Beaumont, Yucaipa area. So in terms of how the numbers have changed, it's great. We've doubled our Biden win number, especially with the opportunity to add Desert Hot Springs and Cathedral City to our district. Those are, 3-to-1 Dem cities like Palm Springs is. And so that really adds a lot of Democratic voters, as well as losing, 29 Palms and other areas of that district. So right now it's a huge opportunity to flip this seat. You'll know that we had incumbent Chad Mays, who was the Republican turned independent in the state legislature. He announced that he's not running for re-election. And so this is a completely open seat. And it's a Democratic seat for the first time. And I know Ellie Kay's heard me say this a few times, but because of the work of organizations like Democrats of the Desert, and LEK and doing voter registration and, building the Democratic movement in the Coachella Valley, we really do have now a Democratic seat that was not there before. And so, like I said, Biden won this district by almost 7 points. So a 7-point advantage that Biden won by. The Democratic registration of the district is 5.25, so over 5 percentage points. And that is up from 2.6 from the last district. So before it was very, very close. It was hard for a Democrat to win. This is still a close district. We actually think it's one of the closest districts in the state for state assembly races, but it's winnable and we are going to win. So I'm not here to campaign, even though I have my info here, but it's better than my city hall one. But I just wanted to describe that race. So I am the only Democrat running in the race, and completely agree with the points made before. What an opportunity to consolidate Democratic voters, to consolidate the Democratic movements and all of the party efforts, right? That's how we win these seats. We've lost before fighting, between Democratic candidates. And I always hate to waste Democratic money, right? When our true enemies are the Ken Calverts out there, and we need to work together to come together to flip these seats. And we can do it now because of all of that work that's gone before. And frankly, the population change. We're seeing a lot of people move from LA, San Francisco, more metropolitan areas or urban centers to the Coachella Valley. So it's a huge, I think that we'll even see more that was counted than what that was counted on redistricting.
All right, well, I want to leave a few minutes now for some questions, and I'll start it out. And I have the same question to ask both Christy and Will, although they have different answers because they're running for different offices and geographically different. With the registration inching and tending towards Democrats in both the areas, what do each of you feel is the key factor that's going to tip this election for the Democrats? And I would suggest, Christy mentioned when we draw the lines in the lobbying, one of the things you mentioned, Christy, was communities of interest in holding the LGBTQ communities together. It seems to me by bringing in Palm Springs and Cathedral City and Desert Hot Springs, that's kind of a cohesive component of both districts, both of you guys. And I'm just curious what you think is going to be the key in both your races to flipping it the way we want. So,
Will, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Christy. So turnout. The turnout is going to be huge. And if you look historically at what happened in the old 42 in the midterm elections, 2020 was a record year for turnout. And it was 350,000 people who voted in that presidential election. But if you go back to 2018 and then 2014 and then 2010, the number of voters who turn out in midterms drops by 100 to 150,000 voters every midterm cycle. And so if we can energize the Democratic base and get them to turn out in the new 41, which is basically a 7 to 9 point swing in registration for Democratic voters, we can win. And the great news about California 41 is that a full third of the electorate has never had to vote for Ken Calvert before. So we get to define him in a sense, right? And so having a really clear contrast with him is going to be a crucial part to winning in November. And I think, with your help, we can really get those turnout numbers in the Coachella Valley way, way, way up, where historically they're very high. And all of those desert cities, as I mentioned earlier, actually went Biden in 2020, including La Quinta, by 0.5%. And so I think if we can get people energized, that's going to be crucial for the midterms.
Christy, how about yours?
Thank you. Completely agree. I mean, everyone who's running in a midterm election is just looking at Democratic turnout and looking at, how excited Dems are going to be to vote, how Biden is doing with the electorate, what the situation that we're going to be in June or November will be in terms of inflation and the economy, and, that now this Russian war and all of these factors. So, yeah, I'm really enthused for my race because we do have more of the Coachella Valley in this race in this district where I have better name ID and people know about our work. And so for us, it's just going to be relying on DOD and so many of the organizations to turn Dems out and to make those arguments and really to do the hard work of chasing ballots, collecting ballots, turning them in for people, reaching people where they're at, right? We're still in a pandemic. Unfortunately, this is my second election I've now run in a global pandemic where, especially our electorate that's older doesn't feel safe, even sometimes knocking door to door, right? And so it's going to be a unique election and we're really going to have to turn out the vote. One thing I'm excited about is the opportunity to work together in campaigns. So, with the congressional district, having the same almost boundary there in the Coachella Valley, right? Having this race will be able to leverage our resources to really hopefully work together to turn out. Let's flip some seats in the Coachella Valley. We've been represented by people who don't represent our values, who vote against things like no on minimum wage, no on LGBTQ rights, no on women's rights, all these issues that we care about on climate change. So what an opportunity, but it's just going to be that much harder and that much more work making that argument for our voters.
Thank you. I'll take a few more questions. I see that Dennis Sheehan has his hand up. So I'll go to him first. If anybody else has any questions, raise your hand here, the little yellow hand, and I'll try to get to you.
Thank you,
Dennis?
Stephen. My question is, it seems at the national level, you've probably all seen this and read this and been exposed to it, but at the national level, the previous president seems to be losing following and maybe believers, if you will. So an awful lot of people are probably wondering, gee, was I that really foolish to tie myself to what this man was talking about? And I have at the national level heard people say, perhaps if Democrats were a whole lot more less judgmental, less preachy in their rhetoric and campaigning, it might be beneficial just now where we can get these people into our tent. How does a thought like that translate to local campaigns, please, by any of the candidates that are present right now?
Thank you. I'll talk about mine first and see if the other candidates have input. The good news is that we're running a straight Democrat versus Republican race. So I didn't say this in my opening. So I'm running as the only Democrat. And then Greg Wallace is running as a Republican. He's Chad Mays's district director. He's worked there for 7 years. Prior to that, he ran Brian Nastandy's campaign for Congress against Congressman Ruiz. He was previously a decline to state, and he just re-registered as a Republican. 2022, what a year to become a Republican. The party is doing so many great things. And so just tell you how I feel among friends. So, for me, this is a Democrat versus Republican race. And I think that obviously the Republican Party in California is floundering. Frankly, they have very little power in the state assembly and the state senate. Their party is disorganized to be able to target these seats in the way that the California Democratic Party can to flip the seat. I've already raised $300,000. That's from the power of labor groups and Democratic organizations and, all of these endorsing organizations. So, I think for these races, especially, we're going to see that even the Republicans, and so we have large independent or declined to state populations in these districts, right? And so I think that we're going to see that they, are not the party of Trump, that they aren't, as extreme, especially in the Coachella Valley, as Will noted, by, how Biden won those cities. Talk about Yucaipa or some like really deep red areas. That's a different story. But yes, I think you're continuing to see the whittling away of the power of the Republican Party, except for that base, that 30% base. And I'm never going to win those votes, but I really am hoping to win the votes of the pro-science, the pro-vaccine, the pro-good public policy, the folks who believe in our values. I think that is going to be a broader population and coalition than just those Democrats, because, yes, Greg Wallace, are you the party that's going to abolish Roe v. Wade? What are your values on that? Will,
right. Unless there's other questions, I want to move, because time goes so quickly here. I could talk about this for hours. I want to thank Christy and Will. I'm sure we'll have more and more conversations very soon with both of you. We look forward to hearing from both of you in a more campaigny kind of context. I'm going to move to our next speaker. I have a little introduction here because some of you may not be familiar with Ron. Ron is running for he's a statewide candidate, statewide. Ron is the twice elected controller of Los Angeles. And I'll put in my own little editorial here. Los Angeles has a government that's bigger than a lot of states, I will tell you. He's become known for his world-renowned approach to accountability and transparency. Ron opened up the city's checkbook for all to see in terms of full disclosure and created an index of the most important measures of equity in Southern California and addressed the most pressing problems in Los Angeles, including housing, homelessness, and the climate. Ron and his husband is a rabbi named Zachary Shapiro, are the proud dads of young twins, Maya and Eli. How old are Maya and Eli?
They're almost 30 months.
Oh, well, you have both your hands full, I see.
Oh, yes.
So
You learn to be an octopus.
yes. So this is our first statewide candidate we've had talk to us. So Ron, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, Democrats, and what a pleasure it is to be with you. And looking forward to being able to do this in person in the not too distant future, especially in the beautiful desert. As you mentioned, I've served as controller for the city of LA for the last 8 years in that elected role, and now running for state controller, first citywide LGBTQ elected official in LA. Also the first in my family to be born in this country. My father was a Holocaust survivor and a refugee. And my parents came here to achieve a better life. And thankfully they were able to do so. But we know that so many other individuals and families are struggling each and every single day. And that's why we come together as Democrats, because we really care about issues of equity. We care about issues of opportunity. We care about doing justice and about creating a better future. And that's also why I am running for this job of state controller. I think we all know the past 2 years have been especially tough with economic and food and housing insecurity, inadequate access to medical care, deep racial inequalities, an environment and a climate in peril. And how do we address these challenges? And certainly we do so with better public policy and clear priorities, but also with budgeting and spending that truly reflects our values. And the job of a controller, be it on a city level or be it in the state, is to make sure that that money is transparent, that it is accountable, that it is effective. And that's what a controller is supposed to do, control. I'm proud to have revolutionized the office in Los Angeles. And if you go to lacontroller.org, you'll find what was our city's first open data initiative that now has really expanded exponentially. First of all, the open checkbook of our city, 10 million transactions, all there, searchable in every way you can imagine. Every vendor, every item that we've ever purchased in the last 10 years. You can even type in the word, let's say glove, and you'll see every glove that we bought, who we bought it from, what we paid for it, be it the lizard handling gloves at the zoo or the welding gloves worn by those at our Department of Water and Power. It's about a radical transparency that is supposed to really create a greater amount of openness and honesty and accountability and civic engagement. And also we've got dashboards for every one of our departments. We've got very hard-hitting audits on the issues that are most important, including one that I issued this week looking at the monies that we're spending on homeless housing. And are we getting our money's worth when it's taking 3 to 6 years to build at very, very high costs? And how can we actually save lives more immediately? How can we reduce the costs? How can we increase production and speed up the timeline. I also launched a comprehensive COVID-19 resource hub, which has got hundreds of different resources that we keep updated all the time with little boxes that you can click. For example, if you're an owner, if you're a renter, if you're an immigrant, if you're a freelancer, that take you to a whole world of different resources that are out there. And Stephen, you mentioned the equity index, which I created. And it's really a first, and it is going to continue to evolve in many ways. But what we did is we wanted to do a dive into each of our neighborhoods and look at a whole variety of measurements of equity, because we talk a lot about it, but what does it mean? And how do you actually measure it and move the needle? Looking at what are the number of owners versus renters, what's the rent burden, proximity to toxics, education levels, income levels. And with time, we're going to be adding more and more. But what the idea of this is to really give you a picture of what are the challenges that are greatest to particular communities, and how do we set goals for what we want that metric to be, so that we can actually begin to measure when we talk about seeking to improve equity, which is so absolutely crucial. I've also done a lot of work in terms of equity when it comes to those who actually work for the city, and tremendous inequities that still exist, not just in LA, but in every city and in every county and in the state government, when it comes to women who are underpaid compared to men, when it comes to those who are part of communities of color that are consistently underpaid, even within government, even within democratic administrations and democratic cities and counties. And so we have to look at the mirror and say, how do we really change this? And the state controller has a tremendous role in overseeing the more than $250 billion a year that the state spends, but also, as you might know, serving on 78 boards and commissions, including State Lands Commission, the Coastal Commission, the massive pension funds that are CalPERS and CalSTRS, the Franchise Tax Board, apportionment of tax credits for affordable housing, bond measures for just about anything you can imagine, transportation and schools and water, natural resources, and much, much more. I'll just say that I am very proud to have the support of our current controller, Betty Yee, of John Chung, many elected officials up and down the state, lots of Democrats. I've been a Democrat my whole life, actually serve on the DNC now. I'm an officer of a group called Democratic Municipal Officials that I don't know if you know about, but our job is to really gather up Democrats who are in elected positions locally across the country, to uplift them, to get more of them elected, of course, and to make sure that they are reflective of what our values are. And I'm the one person in this race who actually is a controller and has been one. You can check out more at ronforcalifornia.com. I know that some of you are delegates coming up for our convention, and would be grateful for your consideration. And I got some time for questions if you've got a few moments.
Well, I'm going to start you out with two questions.
Please.
Who are your opponents, particularly Republicans, if you know? I mean, who else is running for the office?
Sure.
And secondly, my second question is, I've never really paid the most serious attention to the state controller's office because I knew Betty Yee and that was an automatic vote. But what are the issues? What are the big issues that come up in the state controller's race that voters should pay attention to?
Sure. Well, as far as other candidates in the race, there are two other Democrats, and then there is one Republican. One serves on the Board of Equalization up from San Francisco, and one actually is a council member from Monterey Park in the San Gabriel Valley. And then the Republican is actually quite well funded and has been getting money from Republicans all over the country. They are hoping that this might be their one chance to pierce the democratic armor of our state. And we, of course, have to make sure that we put up the strongest Democrat and make sure that that does not happen. Historically, sometimes, positions such as this or insurance commissioner have been more likely than any other kind to be a Republican, and we are a very Democratic state, more so now than ever, thankfully. But we still have to be very much on the alert and make sure that we keep that blue wall. As far as the issues that are right now high up on people's list, well, first of all, everybody wants to know, really, no matter where they are politically or where they are on the spectrum, they want to know that the money that the state has is being put to good use. They also want to know that it is being overseen well, that we're getting good results. And the controller not only oversees the money being spent by the state, but also has a role in making sure that all of the local jurisdictions are reporting their numbers to the controller, that they're doing so accurately. And I want to create a whole new platform by which they can do so in a much more consistent and a much more transparent way, because we have to deliver results as Democrats and as elected officials and as a state. And of course, the many issues that that we all talk about and that we are all concerned about, almost everything in one way or another goes through the controller's office. And the controller has the ability to oversee, to do audits, to opine, to help sponsor legislation in partnership with legislators, to testify or to support or to oppose, among other things, and has a pulpit that is statewide, that is a very powerful one in being able to be an advocate. Moreover, with all of these boards and commissions, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars that get distributed for almost anything that you can possibly imagine. And it's important to have a real clear picture and a real vision of how that ought to be distributed in an equitable and in an effective way. I'm going to be very focused on particular issues of homelessness and housing and how we can improve that across the whole of the state. Also issues relating to climate change, issues looking at how we can get more money for our schools as well. We have consistently underfunded compared to other states, and we see what the results have been. And that's just sort of the tip of the iceberg of the many ways in which a controller can make a difference.
Is Prop 13 reform an issue?
Certainly, that is an issue, has been an issue, will continue to be an issue. And that's something actually that I've taken a deep dive into. As we know, when Prop 13 was passed in 1979, the intent was to make sure that particularly people who had been in their homes for a long time and had gotten older didn't have to then end up selling their homes because the property taxes were going out of control. Interestingly enough, though, what has occurred since then is, while back then the majority of property tax that was paid by commercial property owners, that's kind of flipped on its head. And now most of it is in fact paid by residential property owners, because there's a lot of commercial properties that do not get reassessed so long as they continue to be owned in a single legal entity. There's a real loophole there, especially because I can have a piece of property in an LLC. I can transfer 1/3 of it to you, Stephen, 1/3 of it to you, Nancy, 1/3 of it to you, Robert. But because nobody has actually acquired more than 50%, it doesn't trigger reassessment. And that is an issue that is long crying to be remedied.
Right. I believe there was a ballot proposition that proposed excluding commercial property from the protection of Prop 13. I don't think it passed. Maybe my recollection is wrong.
No, your recollection is largely correct.
Yeah.
I think that there are a couple of different approaches to this. I mean, one is what has been discussed in terms of split roll. The other is to also look at, interestingly enough, it was the legislature after the passage of Prop 13 that defined what a transfer within a legal entity was going to be. It was not Prop 13 itself. And the legislature said they defined it as when more than 50% is transferred to a transferee. And there is some, these little, just a few words can make a very huge difference in how something gets interpreted. And, there's been some discussion about whether that gets changed, even if you were to change that to, let's say, take the word transferee out, single transferee, you would actually have a huge difference in terms of how the law is executed.
I have one more question. I'm accustomed when we get voters' handbooks every couple of years when there are ballot initiatives on there. One of the things it always includes is a section in the description called financial impact.
Yes.
And I'm just curious who in these voter handbooks, which are supposedly neutral in terms of their description, who's the author of these financial impact statements?
These are, there's an office of the legislature, and also through, Secretary of State. Of course, our elections happen through the Secretary of State. It's not the controller that typically will come up with these impacts. Some of these are, easier to actually predict than others. I know, for example, one of the things that I do as controller for the city of LA is before a budget even gets proposed and put together, one of the things you've got to do is financial forecasting. And we bring on economists, including a bunch of university economists, to all kind of give us their opinion of where they think the economy is going and what they think the financial impacts of certain decisions are going to be. Some of it is a science, and some of it, admittedly, is a little bit of guesswork.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ron? If you have a question, would you raise your hand, please? I don't see any hands. I've asked all my questions.
I see a hand for Carlos.
Oh, there, yes, he's up in the,
Hey,
he's up in my corner. Carlos, yes.
I've met you in your office in LA before. I was involved with a nonprofit, Valley Community Healthcare, and you were very, very
Oh, I
nice.
love them. They're terrific.
Yeah, they are terrific. I was board chair for a while. Great organization. But thank you for your help. My question
Their
is about
executive director, I think, just retired after many years.
Yes. Yep. Many
He
years.
was wonderful.
She was unbelievable. Paula was just great. Anyway, but her successor is well prepared too. So my question is about macro issues. But the Fed is doing with interest rates, what's going on geopolitically and wars, and how do you factor all of those issues into money management? I mean, it's pretty hard to predict what all the things that might happen. I mean, earthquakes happen, Putin happens, the Fed happens.
Well, for example, we do our financial forecasting each year for, in preparation for budget season, in the city of LA, and we issue those predictions in February. And we have traditionally been very right and very accurate because we get a lot of different opinions, and we use a lot of well-established methodologies to do that. Well, guess what? 2 years ago came COVID, and it came upon us in large part starting in March of 2 years ago, and we ended up having to issue another financial forecast because things changed very, very quickly. It's not typical, but that does happen. Interestingly enough, we ended up doing okay because the federal government pumped a lot of money into local governments, as we all know. First with the CARES Act, then with the ARP, and now with infrastructure that is coming forward. But we also know that those infusions of money are not going to last forever. We know that California, for example, which has a budget surplus, which is lovely, surpluses do not last forever. And it's, the job of the controller to sometimes be the serious one in the room and say, hey, you need to be a little careful about how it is that we spend this money. But I think we are looking at some real questions in terms of what happens right now. We know that, unfortunately, inflation is upon us. For the first time in a very long time. It's going to put a lot of upward pressure on wages and on the When you look at, for example, most cities, most counties, overwhelmingly what they spend money on is for wages. We're in the service business when all is said and done, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on that. How that affects various pension funds, I think we have yet to see. We know, for example, the cost of fuel, the cost of just very building materials is up. I think we have to be a little concerned, actually, maybe a lot concerned about what that's going to mean in 2 years from now when a lot of the federal dollars run out, which is why I'm urging caution in terms of how many commitments we make, both on the local level as well as on the state level.
Thank you. Anyone else like to ask questions of Ron? Very, very informative. Few minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you very much for coming by. And like the other candidates, we may be hearing from you again soon. So,
well, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you all in something other than the Hollywood squares that we've been experiencing of Zoom, and how nice it will finally be to do so.
Right. So we have 5 minutes left, and I'm going to make my own campaign speech and break the rules that Will and Christy said, but this is not for any particular candidate. The complacency that usually arrives, as Christy noted, or I think it was Will or Christy, that turnout drops dramatically during off-year elections. We should not allow that to happen now. We are in very strange times, and the results of this election are going to reverberate much longer than a lot of midterm elections do. The Democrats' hold on the House is tenuous at best and could be lost. And the Democrats' hold on the Senate, of course, is it's technically non-existent if it weren't for our vice president, who can cast a vote, and several other Democrats who sometimes don't always act like Democrats. I won't name any names here, but I think everybody knows who they are. So we as Democrats of the desert and California Democrats, we have our job cut out. And whether we pick 10 people that may not have been thinking of voting and try to persuade them to get out there and vote and flip these districts, I want to assure everybody that this club will do everything possible to get out as many people as possible. And I encourage all of you to help. It's easy to go to our meetings and pay your dues, but as Woody Allen once famously said, 90% of success in life is just showing up. And it's important that we show up and not just talk, but do something. So that's my little speech for today. If anybody else, I'm going to open the floor. Anybody else in our membership wants to say anything right now, now's the time to do it. I want to welcome Laverne and Bob Hildebrand to the executive board. And thank you, Laverne. If that's it.
I have one thing, Stephen.
Oh, sure. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
Absolutely.
We're hosting an event for the fabulous Eleni Kounalakis on the 27th of March, and we're going to put that information up on Facebook. It's going to be a really special event. There's going to be a very special guest, Senator Boxer. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you guys can make it. And it's going to be in person in March on the 27th.
I have my own Eleni story. When I was running for Congress, I bought a booth that was when we had in-person conventions, and I bought a booth at the convention, and her booth was right next door to mine. So we got to know each other for about 3 or 4 days. We were together there, and that's something that got to know her a little bit and her family.
Well, she and Marcos now have a home here and have been spending a lot of time here. And we were both gushing about how much we love living in the Coachella Valley and how amazing just the energy is here and how hard we're going to be working on turning what's not blue to blue. So she's going to be working with us. She's actually said she'd help me work on some fundraising sources for other local candidates. So.
Okay. All right. Oh, yes, Robert.
Is my microphone on?
It surely is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but our next meeting in March will be the last Saturday of March. And we are hoping to have our 3 congressional, or are there 4? It looks like it's going to be 3 congressional candidates back to talk to us. The nominating committee of our club will have met and interviewed all of them.
All right, you're correct. If everything stays on schedule, then we're going to have a very busy endorsement committee go through the candidates and make recommendations and vote on those at the March 26th meeting. I haven't scheduled any speakers yet because I want to make sure that we finish our work
Right.
before we do that. But it's certainly my plan to lead off with the 3 congressional candidates and possibly more people.
Hopefully you'll finish your work, Steve. Because,
hopefully, yes.
because otherwise we've got to bounce those people to the 4th Saturday in April. The primary is what, the first Tuesday in June, and time is getting shorter for them and for us to make an endorsement.
Yes, but I can always call a special membership meeting to hear the 3 candidates. I mean, if people want to hear them, and I surely do. I surely do. I want to give everybody an equal opportunity to campaign and express their position. All right. Anything else before I wrap it up? My hopes are for peace soon in the Ukraine, and that everything that President Biden is doing will work, and all of our NATO allies. And thank everybody for coming, and thank you very much. And feel free, everybody knows how to reach me. Phone lines are open and my email is open. Thank you very much.
How do I turn this thing off? Goodbye.